Chernobyl was supposed to be dead land for 20,000 years. 40 years later, it holds one of the densest wolf populations in Europe and herds of a horse that once went extinct in the wild. But the thing that turned this place into a sanctuary was never the radiation. It was the absence. And in the last 4 years, that absence has been broken by soldiers, by minefields, and by a single drone. The exclusion zone is not a crater, it's a landscape. Polesian marshland, pine and birch forest, and the Pripyat River running straight through the middle of it. Ukraine holds about 2,600 square kilometers. Belarus holds another 2,160. Together, an empty space larger than Luxembourg, sitting on some of the flattest, most farmable ground in northern Ukraine. In 1986, more than 100,000 people were evacuated within days. Hundreds of thousands more were resettled in the years that followed. Almost nobody came back. And what 40 years of that emptiness produced starts with a map that looks nothing like you'd expect. If you want more stories about the places humans walked away from, subscribing takes about a second. The next 3 minutes are why this channel exists. Radiation here is not a blanket, it's a patchwork. The red forest, roughly 10 square kilometers pressed against the reactor, is the most contaminated ground in the zone, and it stays that way. Move outward and the numbers fall off a cliff. Across most of the zone, background radiation is close to normal. Within a month of the explosion, the short-lived isotopes had mostly decayed. Cesium-137 and strontium-90 stayed, half-lives of around 30 years each. But the people didn't. No hunting, no plowing, no new roads, no pesticides, no traffic. Farm fields turned to scrub, scrub turned to forest. Empty land plus time, that's the entire recipe, and when what it produced took biologists 30 years to believe. In 2015, a long-term census in current biology counted large mammals on the Belarusian side. Moose, roe deer, red deer, and wild boar were about as abundant as in 4 clean reserves. Wolves were more than 7 times as abundant. Brown bears returned after a century away. Lynx came back. 36 Przewalski's horses were released here between 1998 and 2004, a species that had gone extinct in the wild. And the zone now holds one of the largest free-roaming populations on Earth. But not every scientist calls this good news. Timothy Mousseau has documented tumors, cataracts, and DNA damage in the hottest areas. And the tree frogs here are darker than frogs outside the zone. Some are almost black. So which is it? Thriving or quietly damaged? In May 2026, a study finally settled it. 174 camera traps, 60,000 square kilometers of northern Ukraine, published in the Proceedings of the Royal Society. The exclusion zone and the reserve beside it beat every other protected area measured. Highest diversity, best numbers for lynx, moose, red deer, and the horses. And the small, isolated reserves? They did about as well as land with no protection at all. The variable was never radiation. It was size, connection, and the fact that nobody can get in. In February 2022, Russian armor drove through the exclusion zone and occupied it for 5 weeks. Soldiers dug into contaminated soil, labs were looted. What's been left behind is worse. The border with Belarus is now fortified. Concrete, wire, minefields, cutting the corridors animals moved through. Przewalski's horses have died on landmines. Bridges are destroyed. Around 22,000 hectares burned. Fire crews chase blazes started by downed drones, and every fire lifts cesium back into the air. The zone isn't empty anymore. It's a monitored military corridor. And the peacetime pressure is arriving at the same time. In 2025, researchers found that up to 20,000 hectares of abandoned farmland outside the zone could safely grow crops again. Ukraine is running a development strategy for these territories through 2032. In February 2026, 2 abandoned villages inside the zone were named as possible sites for small modular reactors. And the arch over Reactor 4, hit by a drone in February 2025, has, according to the IAEA, lost its confinement function. The barrier here was never really the radiation, it was the absence, and absence has no legal protection. So I want a real answer in the comments. Should the exclusion zone stay empty on purpose, permanently? Subscribe because this one is going to move fast. If this landed, the video on screen is the same pattern without the radiation. Industry walks out, the forest walks in. And next, the Korean DMZ, 250 kilometers of minefields, 70 years of standoff, and cranes nesting in the one strip of Asia nobody is allowed to touch.